As your online business grows, you need to put in place systems and workflows for your content creation process so that you can be productive and actually have time left over to actually scale your business. So in today's video, I'm going to take you through the basic elements of what you need to consider when you're setting up your content creation workflow. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ovi and this channel is dedicated to teaching you the tips, tricks, and tools that you need in order to become a more productive and efficient content creator so that you actually have time to grow and scale your business, which is what it's all about. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down for you how having a defined content workflow can help you to do exactly that. If you do enjoy this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you're new around here, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Before we dive into the video, I also want to remind you that if you haven't grabbed your copy of the ultimate content repurposing strategy, then you definitely want to do that. I've created this for you to give you an idea of how you can create at least 20 to 30 pieces of social media content from just one rich piece of content. So make sure you grab that from the link in the description below. But now let's get into how you can set up your content creation workflow. So the first thing you want to do is define your current process. So before you create, a defined workflow, before you create a system around it, you want to first sit down and think about what is the actual process that you already go through when you're creating your rich piece of content. And if you want to know the difference between rich content and social media content, then check out this video that I did a few weeks ago where I explain what rich content actually is. And that's going to really help you figure out, which pieces of content that you need to set up this workflow for. Even if you're just creating rich content on a social media platform, which is completely possible. You could be microblogging, you could be, uploading videos right on Facebook or Instagram. You could be doing live videos. Those might be your rich pieces of content. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that you just mentally go through the different steps that you take and define all the stages that a piece of content goes through. So for example, you could be, doing your research, your keyword research, gathering any images or anything that you need. Then you're actually creating the piece of content. You might be optimizing, publishing, and then promoting. So those could be your different stages, but figure out what they are for you depending on what type of content you create and where you create it, and actually lay out those stages that each piece of rich content that you create goes through. So once you know the different stages, then you want to think about the different milestones and the deliverables of each milestone. So what do I mean by this? If your first stage is research, maybe the outcome of that stage and the milestone is you have your research done, all of these subtasks within the research category done, and maybe you have an SEO brief prepared. So whatever it is, again, it goes back to thinking about what your current process is, but think about it and figure out what are the deliverables of each stage and what are those milestones that you need to hit in order for the project to move into the next stage. And again, think about your rich pieces of content. Think about each of your rich pieces of content as a project, because each piece of content has multiple steps involved that you need to do in order to get it out ready to publish, ready to promote to your audience, right? So you want to make sure that you're treating each piece of content as a project. And what we're doing by actually setting up this workflow is kind of setting up a project template that you can reuse over and over again every time you go through this project with this each piece of content. Think about the different stages, think about those milestones, and what are those deliverables of each stage. So as you go through and think about those deliverables, you also want to think about creating some templates, because you don't want to be creating the same kind of document over and over every time you create a piece of content. It's so much easier to just have a template that you can fill in, and that really amps up your productivity with your content creation. So before I referred to an SEO brief. So if that's something you do with your keyword research and with, your descriptions, your tags, if you gather all of that in advance, which I actually recommend, it's an easier way to approach this whole thing, to get your research and all of that prepared ahead of time and then actually go through and create your piece of content. But that aside, make sure that you're creating those templates wherever possible. So think about any stage of your process that can be templated and make sure you create those templates and save it in one location. And once you have that, once you have your templates, you have your milestones and deliverables all defined, you want to actually go through and set deadlines for each of those milestones. If you have one piece of content coming out on Friday, then work back from there and think about when do each milestone needs to be met in order for you to publish your piece of content on Friday. Work back the number of days that you need to assign those deadlines to. I don't know if that makes sense, but the number of days in advance of the piece of content being published that you need to set those milestones for all the pre-work for getting your content ready. And if you have team members, now is the time to assign separate tasks for them. So right now we haven't defined the subtasks, but even when it comes to like your milestones, if you have set, team members that do a certain section of the work, or if you have departments set up already, then now is the time to assign those different milestones to different people on your team. Now let's go back to those templates for a moment, because again, to make this process more productive and efficient, you want to make sure that you have templates for anything possible. So if you take a look at my workflow, I don't just have the template for the workflow, not just the checklist of the tasks I have to do, but I also have templates for my SEO brief, for actually doing my keyword research, for my script, and even the file structure. So the next thing you want to talk about, that you want to think about, is how are you going to organize the different files and everything that you need to put together that piece of content. So create your file structure and create a template folder. So this template folder is going to be what you copy each time and just rename it with, whatever the piece of content that you want to create that day. Any images, any promo graphics, everything will go in there. So define how you want your filing structure to be, and also decide on a naming convention. How do you want it to be indexed? So think of a really good naming structure that works for you, that makes sense for you. Set it up that way and have a template folder that you can replicate every single time, so that your content pieces are organized the exact same way for every single piece of content. Now, when it comes to the actual workflow or the actual step-by-step, tasks that you have to do, then here's where you would break down each individual task. So we defined the stages and the milestones before. Now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. Every individual task that you have to do to get a piece of content ready, just write it down under each stage. And why I say to do this, now you may be thinking, girl, I'm just a solopreneur. I'm just doing this on my own. I know what I have to do. Why do I need to write it down? Because there is such a thing as decision fatigue. Your brain has the capacity to make a certain number of decisions per day. So if you have a checklist that you can just run through, it takes away that pressure of having to always think of it off of your mind. So you actually open up your mind and your energy to, be used less for content creation, because you have just a checklist that you go through, so that you're actually saving your time and energy for doing other things in your business, which is what we want to do. Even if you're just on your own for now. And the other part of that is, when you do start hiring people, it makes it so easy, because anyone can just come into your organization and take a look at these documents and figure out what they have to do. So make sure that you're documenting each step and just create a checklist for yourself. And my favorite way to do this is through a project management software like Asana or even Trello. I prefer Asana, but that again is just a personal preference. You can do it on Trello, you can do it on ClickUp, you can do it on Monday.com, whatever project management software that you use or your company uses, you can do this on any one of them. But set up your step-by-step task list and create a workflow template. Workflow template. And another tip here is to use a Kanban board structure, so that you have your stages laid out visually and you can just move your project, move each piece of content through the different stages. So instead of just having a list, you can obviously have the checklist within each project, but have your stages laid out in a board so that you can keep moving them from each stage to stage so that you know exactly where a certain piece of content is at. And another thing is that you want to define the start and end of your workflow so that you know exactly when one piece of content is actually in your workflow and this is something that you now need to work on, and you know when something is completely done, it's completely finished with. You may repurpose it at some other point in time, but for now, that project is complete. It can be archived. So define your start and end, and also have an idea bank. So any content ideas that you come up with, decide whether you want them as part of the workflow or something completely different. And only when you decide to create that piece of content, it comes into the workflow, but decide what works for you. For me, I have it visually in the same place as my workflow on my Asana, but obviously until I move it to, I think it's scheduled date. So until I decide that, I have a day that this particular video will go live on YouTube, then it's not in the workflow. So decide, what signifies the beginning of the workflow and where you keep your idea bank. And again, remember that the purpose of doing this, purpose of having a system and a workflow set up is so that on a day-to-day basis, while you're a solopreneur, you're not depending on your memory, and everything that you need to do is laid out for you so that you can just go through it and you avoid that decision fatigue. And also when you start hiring people, it becomes so much easier to onboard your team and just let them know exactly what you need them to work on because everything is already systemized. So having this done from the beginning is really going to help you. So even if you don't have a team yet, start doing this today so that you can have this going forward and you can start systemizing anything else that you've already started working on, so that, in the future, when you go to repurpose content, it becomes so much easier to find old content too, because everything's in the same kind of structure that, your team is used to. So anyone can pull an old piece of content and repurpose it for you. So make sure that you're doing this from the beginning, as soon as possible, so that you have actual structures and processes and systems in your business that makes scaling your business so much easier for you. And talking about repurposing, make sure you also download that repurposing guide from the link in the description, because that's going to give you so many different ideas of what kind of social content or what kind of mini pieces of content that you need to repurpose your rich content into. And you can also create some templates for those and save those into the same folder structure so that this entire process becomes so much easier for you. In next week's video, I'm actually going to take you behind the scenes into my own Asana and show you how I have my YouTube workflow set up so that you can see what this entire process that I talked about today looks like in real life. So if you want to catch that video, then make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you are the first to know when it comes out. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and share it with another content creator friend who could use these tips. Check out my other videos right here to learn more about being productive and being a more productive content creator and business owner. And thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you for being here. I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.